The Colosseum wasn't built to entertain Rome. It was built to distract it. That may be the biggest lie history ever carved into stone. For nearly 2,000 years, we've admired the marble, the engineering, the grandeur. But almost nobody asks the only question that matters: why was it really built? History remembers the gladiators. It almost forgot the illusion. After the Great Fire of 64 AD, Rome's rulers discovered something terrifying. An empire built on fear eventually creates people with nothing left to fear. Sooner or later, hungry people stop fearing their rulers. They begin tearing down the gates. So Rome built something far more powerful than another army. It built a machine, one designed to transform blood into entertainment, entertainment into loyalty, and loyalty into political control. If you're fascinated by the hidden motives, subscribe now, because every dossier we open begins where the official story ends. The world called it the Colosseum. Rome called it the Flavian Amphitheatre. But that name hides a darker purpose, because this wasn't just the greatest arena ever built. It may have been the most successful propaganda machine the ancient world ever created. 64 AD. The night sky above Rome has turned orange. Entire neighborhoods disappear behind walls of fire. Families flee through smoke so thick they can barely recognize the streets they've walked their entire lives. Temples collapse. Markets vanish beneath the flames. For 6 days and 7 nights, the greatest city on earth burns. And strangely, the most powerful man in the empire is nowhere to be seen leading the rescue. His name is Nero. Almost immediately, the rumors begin. Some claim the emperor watched the inferno from a safe distance. Others insist he performed music while Rome screamed around him. Whether those stories are true is still debated. But what happened after the fire isn't. While thousands of Romans searched the ashes for missing children, for parents, for anything their lives had once contained, Nero was planning the largest private palace the empire had ever seen. He called it the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. It wasn't simply a palace, it was an entire world built for one man. Artificial lakes, private forests, dining halls covered in marble, walls decorated with gold and precious stones. And towering above it all, a colossal bronze statue of Nero himself. Imagine losing everything you owned, then watching your emperor build paradise on the ruins of your neighborhood. This wasn't just extravagance, it was humiliation. And humiliation is one of the most dangerous forces in politics. People can survive hunger, they can survive war, they can even survive oppression. But humiliation leaves behind something far more powerful than fear. It creates memory, and memory is difficult to govern. 4 years later, that memory returned. Whispers became anger. Anger became rebellion. Rebellion became collapse. In 68 AD, the emperor who believed Rome belonged to him found himself completely alone, abandoned by his allies, declared an enemy by the Senate. With nowhere left to run, Nero took his own life. Rome had lost an emperor, but it had gained something even more dangerous, a population that remembered. They didn't just remember the fire, they remembered who had appeared to profit from it. That left Rome's new rulers facing a problem no army could solve. How do you rebuild trust without surrendering power? How do you convince millions of angry citizens that the empire still belongs to them? The answer arrived in the form of a soldier, not a prince, not a legendary conqueror, a practical commander named Vespasian. He possessed no divine ancestry, no mythical claim to the throne. What he understood instead was people. Vespasian recognized something Nero never did. Fear can force obedience, but it can never create loyalty. Loyalty has to be performed, seen, experienced. So he made a decision that changed history. He ordered Nero's private lake drained. The greatest symbol of one man's greed would disappear, and in its place, Rome would build a monument that appeared to belong to everyone. But appearances can be carefully engineered, because Vespasian wasn't simply replacing a palace. He was designing the greatest political illusion the ancient world had ever seen. And before a single stone could rise from the ground, he first had to build something far more important: belief. 72 AD. Vespasian gives the order not to build another palace, not another temple, not another monument celebrating an emperor. He orders the construction of something Rome has never attempted before, a structure so enormous, so breathtaking, that an entire empire would stop talking about the man who burned Rome and start talking about the empire that had saved it. But almost immediately, his engineers face a problem no civilization has ever solved. How do you build the largest amphitheater in human history without a single modern machine? No engines, no hydraulic cranes, no steel, no electricity, only timber, iron, rope, stone, and thousands of human hands. Imagine standing at the construction site. The air is thick with dust. The sound of hammers echoes from sunrise until long after darkness falls. Wooden treadwheel cranes groan beneath impossible weight as men walk inside them like living gears. Oxen drag enormous blocks of travertine stone across miles of rough roads. Stonecutters shape each block by hand. Blacksmiths forge iron clamps that will bind the structure together. Architects shout measurements over the constant roar of chisels striking stone. Every mistake costs time. Some cost lives. Yet the work never stops. Because this project isn't simply important, it is political. Millions of pounds of stone arrive from quarries more than 20 miles away. Some individual blocks weigh several tons, each one lifted without a single powered machine. Even today, engineers still study how the Romans achieved such extraordinary precision. But the true genius of the Colosseum wasn't its size, it was its system. Instead of treating the building as one enormous structure, Roman engineers broke it into repeating sections, arch after arch, vault after vault, each supporting the next. Dozens of crews could work simultaneously, building different parts at exactly the same time. It was modular construction, nearly 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution gave it a name. What should have taken decades rose from the heart of Rome in only 8 years. By 80 AD, under Emperor Titus, the impossible stood complete, nearly 50 meters high, capable of holding around 70,000 spectators, the largest amphitheater the ancient world had ever seen. People traveled simply to look at it. They admired its scale, its elegance, its impossible engineering. And that was exactly what Rome wanted, because the greatest trick wasn't convincing people to enter the Colosseum. The greatest trick was convincing them it had been built for them. Every towering arch, every polished corridor, every perfectly calculated staircase quietly delivered the same message. Look what your emperor has given you. It felt like generosity. It was strategy, because magnificent buildings don't just shape skylines, they shape memory. Soon, the fire that had nearly destroyed Rome would no longer be the first thing people pictured. The Colosseum would take its place. The illusion had already begun. But Rome wasn't finished. building the monument was only the first step. The real masterpiece was what happened after 70,000 people walked through its gates. The Colosseum looked like a gift. That was the first illusion. From the outside, it belonged to everyone. A monument built for the people. Free entry, free entertainment. A day away from hunger, a day away from politics. But the moment a Roman citizen reached the gates, the illusion ended. Imagine standing in line with thousands of others. In your hand is a small piece of broken pottery. Your ticket. Scratched into its surface is a simple number. Not your name, not your profession, just a number. You hand it to a guard. He barely looks at your face, because Rome already knows exactly where you belong. The Colosseum wasn't simply built to hold 70,000 people. It was built to sort them. 80 towering entrance arches surrounded the arena, each carefully numbered, each connected to a maze of corridors and staircases. Within minutes, an entire city could flow inside with astonishing precision. No confusion, no chaos, no crowds surging toward the emperor. Everything had already been decided. Your entrance determined your staircase determined your seat, and your seat quietly reminded you who you were. Closest to the arena sat the emperor, the senators, the Vestal virgins. Their seats were carved from polished marble. They could hear every scream, see every wound, smell the blood soaking into the sand. Just behind them, the equestrian class, military commanders, Rome's wealthiest citizens, higher still, ordinary Romans, packed together on long rows of stone benches. Comfort gave way to necessity, and at the very top, almost touching the sky, stood the poor, laborers, freed slaves, many women. From that distance, the gladiators below were little more than moving figures against yellow sand. They didn't witness every cut. They witnessed the spectacle. At first glance, this looked like architecture. It wasn't. It was social engineering carved into stone. Every corridor, every staircase, every seat reinforced the same message. Rome has a place for everyone, and everyone should stay in theirs. That mattered far more than most people realize, because a society divided into carefully separated classes rarely unites against the people in power. The emperor didn't need to remind citizens who ranked above them. The building did it for him, silently, hour after hour, year after year. But the most brilliant psychological trick wasn't where people looked up. It was where they looked down. Imagine you're a laborer. Life is difficult. Food is expensive. Your future uncertain. Then the games begin. Your eyes don't drift toward the imperial box. They drift toward the sand, toward someone whose situation is even worse than yours. A condemned prisoner, an animal hunter, a wounded gladiator. For a few hours, your frustration leaves the palace and dies in the arena. Rome hadn't eliminated resentment. It had redirected it. That is one of the oldest strategies of power. When people focus on the spectacle below, they stop asking questions about the people above. The Colosseum wasn't just organizing bodies, it was organizing attention. And once 70,000 eyes were fixed on the sand, Rome could unveil its greatest illusion, because beneath the feet of every spectator, hidden behind stone and darkness, was a machine so advanced, it made death appear like magic. The crowd believed the greatest spectacle happened above the sand. They were wrong. The real performance was happening beneath their feet. Hidden below the arena lay the Hypogeum, a vast underground labyrinth, 2 stories deep, a maze of tunnels, animal cages, storage chambers, wooden elevators, trapdoors, counterweights, invisible passageways. if the Colosseum above was the stage, this was the machinery that made the impossible appear effortless. Imagine sitting among 70,000 spectators. The arena falls silent. A gladiator raises his sword. Then, the ground begins to move. A section of the arena floor slowly disappears. For a brief moment, nothing. Then a wooden platform rises from complete darkness. Seconds later, a fully grown lion is standing in the center of the arena. To the crowd, it feels impossible, almost supernatural. But there are no miracles here, only engineering. Hidden beneath the floor, teams of workers strain against massive wooden capstans. Heavy hemp ropes tighten, counterweights shift. Every movement has been rehearsed, every lift timed to the second. The audience never sees the sweat, the splintered hands, the men choking on smoke from oil lamps as they operate the machinery below. Because true power often works best when it remains invisible. Mourning belonged to the Venations, exotic animals brought from every corner of the empire, lions from North Africa, leopards from Asia Minor, bears from distant frontiers, creatures most Romans had only heard about in stories. Hundreds, sometimes thousands over the course of grand festivals, were killed. Not because Rome feared them, not because Rome needed them, but because every dead beast carried the same message. The empire rules even nature. By midday, the arena became something darker. Condemned prisoners stepped onto the sand. Some were executed publicly. Others were forced into dramatic reenactments of Roman myths. Justice became theater. Punishment became entertainment. The crowd wasn't simply watching death. They were watching the state demonstrate absolute authority. Then, the gates opened one final time. The gladiators emerged. History often imagines every contest ending in death. Reality was far more calculated. A skilled gladiator represented years of investment, training, food, medical care, equipment. A famous champion filled the arena again and again. Killing him too readily made little economic sense. The real product wasn't death. It was suspense. When a fighter fell, 70,000 voices erupted at once. Hands filled the air. Many spectators believed they were deciding who would live and who would die. But that was perhaps the greatest illusion of all. The emperor always held the final authority. The crowd wasn't being given power. It was being given the feeling of power. And history has taught the same lesson again and again. People who believe their voices matter are often less likely to notice how little control they truly possess. That was Rome's masterpiece, not the architecture, not the engineering, not even the blood. It transformed obedience into participation. On rare occasions, the illusion grew even larger. Ancient writers describe spectacles in which the arena itself was flooded to stage mock naval battles, though historians continue to debate exactly how these displays evolved over time. Whether witnessed in the Colosseum itself or in earlier Roman arenas, the message was unmistakable. Rome could command the land, the beasts, even the sea, or at least, it wanted its people to believe it could. The Colosseum had become more than a building. It had become a theater of certainty. Every cheer, every gasp, every drop of blood whispered the same idea. The empire is invincible. But while 70,000 eyes remained fixed on the spectacle, something extraordinary was happening beyond the arena walls. The illusion was working. The people were looking exactly where Rome wanted them to look, and almost no one noticed. The empire itself had already begun to crack. The empire that built the Colosseum believed it had created the perfect machine, a machine capable of turning unrest into celebration, turning anger into applause, turning attention away from power and towards spectacle for centuries. It worked, generation after generation. The crowds arrived, the gates opened, the sand turned red, the people went home believing they had witnessed greatness, while beyond the arena walls, the empire slowly changed. Taxes rose, political corruption deepened, economic crises returned, civil wars erupted, emperors came and went, but the games continued, because as long as the spectacle endured, the illusion endured. Then, almost without anyone noticing, the machine stopped, not with one final performance, not with a triumphant farewell. It simply became too expensive. By the 5th century, the empire that had once commanded continents could no longer afford the distraction that had helped hold it together. The cheers faded, the trapdoors fell silent, grass pushed through the sand where gladiators once fought. The greatest stage in the ancient world was abandoned to time. Then history performed one final act of irony. Earthquakes fractured its walls, looters stripped away its marble, iron clamps were torn from the stone. Block by block, the Colosseum disappeared, not because enemies destroyed it, because later generations recycled it. Its stone helped build palaces, fortifications, churches, and according to long-standing historical accounts, material from the Colosseum was reused in projects associated with St. Peter's Basilica. Think about that. The monument that perfected public spectacle helped construct one of Christianity's holiest landmarks. One civilization built it to glorify imperial power. Another reused it to glorify faith. History rarely destroys symbols. It repurposes them. But here's the question that has haunted this investigation from the very beginning. Why do nearly 7 million people still visit the Colosseum every year? Why do we stand beneath its arches, photograph its ruins, admire its engineering, and call it one of humanity's greatest achievements, instead of one of history's most sophisticated instruments of political control? Because the final illusion never ended. Vespasian didn't simply build an amphitheater. He built a memory. He transformed a weapon into a wonder. And 2,000 years later, most of us still see exactly what he wanted us to see. History remembers the gladiators, the architecture, the grandeur. It almost forgot why the building existed in the first place. That was the masterpiece. Not the lions, not the executions, not even the blood. The masterpiece was convincing generations that the Colosseum was built for entertainment, when it was built to shape perception. The Colosseum still stands today, not simply as a ruin, but as a warning. Because every civilization builds spectacles. Every civilization builds monuments. Every civilization tells stories about itself. The question is never whether those stories are true. The question is, what are they trying to stop us from seeing? If this dossier changed the way you'll look at the Colosseum forever, then it accomplished exactly what history should do. Not tell us what happened, but teach us how power works. If you want to uncover the hidden psychology, forgotten motives, and untold strategies behind history's greatest events, subscribe and join us for the next dossier. Because once you learn to recognize the illusion, you'll begin to see it everywhere.